Hi everyone, how is everyone? Sorry, I just realised that we weren't straight. How is everybody? What's everybody up to? So, I'm Charlotte, I'm the fertility coach. I always get asked what channels and platforms I'm on. So, my YouTube channel is Charlotte the Fertility Coach. My Facebook is The Fertility Coach, and my Instagram is Fertility Coach UK. So that's first things first. So the video that I'm going to do today is just a quick one, really, in the fact of how it all started for me and when it got really bad. So the internet is a wonderful place, and we've got everything is so accessible at our fingertips. We've got our phones, we can get on the internet, we can download apps, we can communicate on that. We've got iPads, we've got computers, we've got access to computers and stuff at work generally now. So depending on what job you do, of course, but where I really started to notice it was that I was going home and me and Mark weren't even really speaking so much on a night, and when I looked at why, it was because I was always on my phone, and I was always on my phone googling and researching ovulation, why can't I get pregnant, best pregnancy tests, kit, best ovulation kit, tips to get pregnant, tips to stay pregnant, and then I always say, I would come across posts that were 5 and 10 years old and make an association with them, and it wasn't until I sat and started thinking, do you know what, this is actually what I do every single night, that I started to think, okay, well, I think maybe what I am doing and the time I am spending, I could probably be spending doing something more or doing something better. So that's when I really started to change and be really specific as to what I was looking for. And hand on heart, I was probably still spending the amount of time that I originally was looking at things, but it was in a more constructive way, in a way that helped me more and benefited me more, because I really honed in on myself, my diagnosis, my cycles, my ovulation, and I don't pay any secret to the fact that I started to look at, if I was taking something, why am I taking it, what's in that is going to change things for me and make me ovulate, or make my periods better, or make the pain better, or make my endo better. So that's what changed for me. And I speak to people all the time who say, it consumes my life, and I 100% get that. And I 100% get that, because if I wasn't sitting on an evening ignoring my husband about it, I was Googling. If I was sat somewhere, if I was at work and I had my lunch break, if not, and then I was at work, I'd be checking on my phone, I'd be reading books, I'd be on forums. Even if I was driving my car to and from work, I'd be thinking about it, and listening to things. I bought downloads, I connected them to my car. So I think when people say that it takes over your life and it consumes everything, people think that that's an exaggeration, and it can't possibly. It really does, because it's every single aspect of your life, every single part of your life, and it becomes exhausting physically, mentally and emotionally, because that's all you can think of. It's your only trail of thought. And there's all these cliches, isn't there, of if you want something enough and you think about it enough, it'll happen. That's not the case with it, because I can guarantee you everyone who is struggling to get pregnant would be pregnant right now if that was the case, because there's nobody who thinks about anything more than someone who wants a baby and who hasn't got one, or is struggling to conceive. So that isn't the case at all. So my first bit of advice to people is always, if you are going to look at things, be really specific, really home in on what you want to know and your knowledge. And there are so many amazing books out there now. There are so many fantastic Instagram and Facebook pages, there's LinkedIn pages, there's YouTube channels, there's bloggers, there's vloggers, there's so much out there now, and that's quite different to the start of my journey, like 10, 11 years ago. So when it really heightened, when, you know, we really started talking about having a baby. So the world has become a much better place in the form of that. But what can happen is, before you know it, and this happens in the general Facebook world, you can look and you've been scrolling through Facebook for 2 hours or Instagram for 2 hours, and what have you learned? So one of the first questions I tend to generally ask people is, what have you learned? And they sort of look at me and probably a little bit like, well, that's why I've come to you. And I get it, and I completely agree with it, but I need to know what you've learned already and what you've done. And that's not a trick question or a question to catch anybody out. That's okay, what have you gone and done? Because I don't want to be spending your sessions going over the same thing. So let's just make sure that our understandings are the same, that we're both on the same page with that, then we can move on. Because there's no point me talking to you for an hour session about your cycles if you are absolutely shit hot on them. There's no point me talking to you for an hour about your ovulation if you know exactly when you're ovulating, when you track it, you do more than one method of tracking. There's no point. We'll go, right, okay, yeah, we've honed that down, yeah, great, let's move on to something else, let's spend that hour session on something else. So the mindset of it is, if that was the case, you wouldn't want to utilise one of your sessions with me, whether you have an 8-hour or 12-hour session, so it's an 8-week programme or 12-week programme. You won't want to do that, so therefore why are you spending your own 1-hour slot or 3-hour slots on a night looking at the same thing? Because that's what we do, we just go over and over and over and over and look at the same thing. So utilise your time wisely. When you've honed in on something and you've got your information, say, yeah, okay, I've got that, understand that, I'll move on. If there's something about it that you don't understand, then by all means go back. But don't keep going on the same. Don't keep spending the time doing the same thing, the same work. You wouldn't do it at work. If you'd done a job at work and it was done, you wouldn't start all over again and do the same job for nothing and use your time, spend your time doing that. You'd do something different. So I really want us to get into that habit of doing that. So when I say, what I want you to, the aim of this is to go away and think, right, what have I learned? And do you know what? There is nothing wrong with, and I hold my hands up, I was one of these people that if you'd have asked me, I probably would have got really on the defence and be like, well, you know, I spend 3 hours or 4 hours a night looking at this, that and the other. But the reality is, what had I learned? Not really that much. Because I was just going over and over and over the same material, over the same things all the time, looking at other people's symptoms, other people's 2-week waits, other people's pregnancies, other people's IVF stories, other people's miscarriage stories. I wasn't being specific about me. So what had I learned? Not really that much. How much time would I spend on it? Shed loads. So spend the time wisely, spend the time on you and your journey, because as much as we can care about everyone else and it's lovely, you've got to concentrate on your own story, you've got to concentrate on your own path, stay in your own lane, and be really shit hot on your own knowledge. So what have you learned? Write down or go away and find out what have you learned. And there's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, not really that much, I don't really know that much, because I didn't until I made that change. So if you are in that position, change what you're doing with your time. I'm not going to say to you, oh, don't bother spending that time, because there's not some click button where you can switch it on and off. But if you are going to spend the time looking into things, use it wisely, be constructive with it, plan out what you want to find out. And by all means, you will never be in the position that you know absolutely everything there is to know, but you can be in the position where you take a book into the gynecologists and the doctors, like I do, and say, this is me, I know my cycles, I know my ovulation, I know my body, I know the pain of this, I know when it's going to happen, I know my flare-ups, I know what eating food will do, certain foods, because we do expect them, and yes, they are doctors, but we expect them to give us all the answers. In the UK, in a doctor's appointment, you're lucky if you get 5 minutes, but even say we go and have a gynecologist appointment or something, we're probably looking at half an hour at the most. So we're expecting them to, in half an hour, ask us all about our past, all about the present, all about everything and give us a diagnosis and plan the future for us. Now, to do that, we need to be in a position where we've got everything either up here or in a book or notepad, whatever you want to do, and say, yeah, okay, in October I ovulated at this time. In September, I don't really know if I ovulated, my levels were a little... Rather than, don't know. We've got to be able to use that time wisely to extract the best and the premium stuff out of the doctor, out of the gynaecologist, out of our clinician, out of whoever we're going to see. The quicker and the faster we can give them the answers, the more value we can get out of that appointment. And that's the way to start looking at it. And that's the way to start looking at your own time. The quicker and the faster and the deeper the knowledge that you can do, the more you can go on and learn, so you can take more into that appointment. And you'll get more out of it, trust me. Because the amount of appointments to begin with I sat at and said, I don't really know. Oh, yeah, well, the pain feels a little bit like this. And I don't really know if there's any pattern with the pain, I'm not sure. Or, yeah, well... I think I ovulated, I wasn't sure. Now ask me, and I'm like, yeah, okay, this is what, get my book out. And I'm like, yeah, I could tell you, and that's not I'm perfect, because everything I ever teach and everything I ever help with my coaching sessions are things I've learned from the good, the bad and the ugly. And believe me, there's been more bad and ugly, but there has been a few good things that I've picked up along the way. And obviously that's the idea of the coaching, for me to help you with all of these things, help you with the bad and the ugly, and then pass on the good things that I have learned and the good things that I have started. So if you haven't watched my other videos, and this is the video that you've watched first, welcome first of all. I always talk about noting everything down, making sure you have your cycles, your ovulation, dates, flare-ups, pain, when are you ovulating, what symptoms did you feel, how did you track that, did you use a kit, did you use a BBT thermometer, did you track your mucus, how long was your cycle, how heavy was it, when did you do the baby dancing, when's your 2-week wait, what symptoms, and write it all down. And before you know it, within a couple of months, you've got a really in-depth story about you. And if anybody asks you anything, you'll be able to tell them, and that's the place that we need to be at. So I'll put it on to you. What have you learned? Go away and have a look at what you've learned. If you haven't learned enough, that's okay. Put your hands up like I did and go, oh, I'm spending all this time, but actually I'm probably not really learning what I need to, and make that change. If it is something that you want to do and you want me to help you make that change and really home in on you, your diagnosis, your story, your fertility, your future, because that's what it's all about at the end of the day, that's why we're all here, then please feel free to contact me. Like I say, on Instagram, I'm Fertility Coach UK. On Facebook, I'm the Fertility Coach. YouTube, it's Charlotte-the Fertility Channel. My LinkedIn is coming soon, and that will be the Fertility Coach UK. So I'll be on all platforms for you to access. There are testimonials. Website is just having a little bit of work done, and then that will be launching. So I will let you know about that. But just go away today and think, okay, what have I learned? And hopefully if you've watched my top 10 tips for getting and staying pregnant, you will have learned something from that, if nothing else. Take care. Bye-bye.